Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. I hope it says it's what it says I'm live. It says there's some people here. Last time I did a live, it was on something else. I did the whole thing with no audio. So if someone could let me know that you can hear me, then that'd be useful. Otherwise, I'll just chat away as normal. Just give a minute for some people to join. I've got tons of questions to get through, but feel free to post your questions in the, thank you, Tamsin, you can hear me. Feel free to post questions in the chat and I will keep an eye on them and hopefully we can get through as many as we need or as many as I can. Or yeah, there's plenty to talk through anyway. So the reason for today is that I keep getting messages from people just needing a little bit of help here and there. So not like a full-blown consultation, but just the odd question here and there. So here I am for that thing, and I'm more than happy to help. But obviously, if there's any massive problems that would require a behaviour consultation, then I can help as much as I can. But I'm here if you want to go on to book a consultation, or there's other behaviourists available, or we can just talk round about what would be helpful and hopefully you can get some advice there. But I think I will begin. I should just say I've given Bucky, my dog, a great big walk and he's asleep under the desk. So if he starts snoring, I'm very sorry. And Fig's here. I made him come in, but he should settle down and have a little sleep in a minute. Okay, so hi Lucy, hi Tamsin, hi Mandy, thanks for coming. I tried to keep an eye on the comments as we go. But the first question I have is from Tamsin, and my question is, we have 2-cat household, both neutered males, and one of them sprays indoors and has even started doing it on my partner, which, yeah, haven't experienced that myself, but I've seen that plenty of times and it's horrible. We've tried ignoring it, but it has gotten now to telling him off, but will this make it worse? My partner has said about putting him in a timeout or spraying him with water when he does it, as he thinks it's a dominance thing, but I'm worried it will make it worse. So my thoughts on spraying are, well, it's such a complicated problem, and I'm sure you've looked online already and have seen so many different ways of trying to treat this problem. But one thing that it is important to do is not to punish, because generally what you'll find is, for the most part, spraying is based on like a negative emotion. So it tends to be either anxiety, fear, that sort of thing, or it's more to do with frustration. So it could be that they're worried about cats outside, so they're trying to like fortify their territory to say like, I don't want you to encroach on my patch. Or it could be like, I've seen cats that if they want to go outside and they can't because the door's closed, then they'll spray because it's like that frustration side of things. So regardless of why your cat is spraying, I say regardless for the point of this question, obviously it's very important to understand why he's spraying if you can. In terms of how to respond, punishment never, or telling off in any way, never helps, because if your cat's spraying based on the fact that they're scared about the cats outside, or not getting on with the cat inside, or frustration for some other reason, by telling him off or scolding him in some way or another, then you're introducing the fear there. So suddenly he might be thinking, well, I was worried about that cat out there, but now I'm also worried about my owner. Like, is she going to be nice? Is she not? Is he going to be nice? Is he not? So we don't want to introduce that feeling of like being unsure around you or wondering what sort of mood they're going to be in, because sometimes you're nice and sometimes you're not. So it's always best, and it sounds just ridiculous, to ignore, like distract if you can, and maybe like gently move on. Like if you see him getting into position, like we all know that position where they back up against something and the tail starts going up and the back feet are going, and you think, oh my God, I know it's going to happen. You can usher them on and be like, no, off you go. Or distract with something else, like call him over, or if you've got a toy to hand, then that's fine. But it never normally helps to shout and I know it's hard not to. You're going to be like, oh my God, you're about to do it. But that won't be helpful. And also like pushing away like a bit more heavily than you might intend, like those sorts of things won't help. And I've had people in the past that have smacked, thrown cushions, like gone ballistic, that type of thing. I'm sure that's not what's happening, but for anyone else watching that may have gone down that route, then again, it's going to complicate things, and then there could be multiple reasons why they're spraying rather than that one original issue that we were going to deal with. In terms of the dominant side of things, I hear that quite frequently, and just as a like all-around blanket message, cats don't really do dominance, especially with people. So you might notice that one cat might seem more dominant than another if you've got a 2-cat household, but normally that comes down to confidence more than dominance. So it'd be like one cat's always there to get the food first, and one cat will push the other one out of the way because he wants that bed instead of the other cat. So that can look like dominance, but it's basically like, I want that bed, and I know if I like nudge in there, then you'll get out. So it's sort of learning from previous experiences and having that confidence to be like, no, you move, rather than the other one might be like, okay, fine, you have it. So it can look like that side of things. But cat relationships, when they live in groups, they don't really have a dominant hierarchy. So we don't have, like, reassure your husband, there is definitely no dominance there. There will be a reason for it, be it something like, like he's worried about, or something that he's expecting to happen and it's not happening. So not his needs might not be being 100% met, be it in your hands or not. Like there might be something out of your hands that's making him feel unsettled. But generally, what we want from spraying cats is we want them to be happy, confident, like stress-free individuals. So have a scout around and think, is there anything that's causing him any stress? Is there anything he's particularly concerned about? Is there anything that you know causes him anxiety or fear, or he's scared of? Because that's where you should focus your attention in trying to overcome spraying. Because once you understand why it's happening, then that can help you understand how to resolve it. And then telling him off, putting in time out, all those things doesn't really factor into that at all. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know. So next question is from Andy. And she says, what's the best way to react when my 4-year-old neutered female brings in live prey? Mostly mice, but very occasionally birds. A year or so ago, I woke up to find there was a mouse in the bed running up my side. Should I stay calm and appear unperturbed, or firmly say no? Sometimes there's several mice a day. Oh, I really feel for you, because it's such a horrible problem. And my cats don't hunt, so I'm very lucky, but next doors do. And we've had the occasional, I want to say present, I know it's not intentional, of offering left on the driveway or in the back garden. So, well, that still doesn't compare to in the bed, does it? But I sort of get what you are going through. In my experience, how you react isn't going to make any difference to how keen they are to go and hunt, unless, again, we're introducing a punishment. So if you're really telling her off when she brings them in, then it won't help with the hunting, but it might introduce anxiety. So there's obviously that negative consequence there. So definitely don't do that. And I know you're not. But again, if you ignore it, or if you lavish her with praise, or whatever you like, the different options are, I don't feel like it will make any difference in terms of whether she's going to bring them in or not. Because what she's doing is going out and hunting where the danger is, where the predators are and the competition, and she's bringing her catches back to a safe place. So lucky you happen to be the safest part of her territory, which obviously is terrible for you and not necessary. She could leave them downstairs, she could leave them in another safe place. But it's that's her motivation for doing it. It's not the fact that she's trying to give it to you, or that she is expecting a response from you. So really what you do is not going to make much difference to that. I know that sounds terrible, but I was thinking about this earlier because I knew you sent a question ahead, and I was thinking through, you could potentially reward her for putting them elsewhere. So I know this sounds almost impossible, and I don't even know how you would set that up, but maybe if you ignore the ones brought into the bed, but then give her lots of praise for the ones that she does leave somewhere else that's more appropriate, then you might find she leaves them there more often and they're less in the bed. But I'm clutching at straws here. It's a really, really hard one. In terms of trying to reduce her hunting drive, which seems to be everyone's next question, make sure that she's fed little and often, if that suits your household. Sometimes if they're fed 2 set meals, then because there's such a long period between meals, she's like, well, I'll just fill that gap with a little something out there, although it doesn't sound like she's eating them, to be fair. And make sure she's got lots of stimulation at home, so there's lots of fun things to chase and play with, and that you're moving the toys around as well, because if it's on the floor, then it's already dead prey. The toys are already dead prey, so there's no point by chasing them. So lots of playtimes can be helpful as well. Making sure she's fed a suitable diet, which I'm sure she is. These are just basic things to cover, but something to check with your vet, making sure she's getting enough protein and she's not missing anything there. But sometimes they're just hunters, aren't they? That's the when I speak to people, they're like, yeah, she's a massive hunter. So some of them just are more like that than others. So it's it's the downside to having a cat, isn't it? It's really bad. But yeah, you could try something like rewarding her for putting them elsewhere, but I wouldn't overthink the way you react. As long as it's not a negative reaction, then it's probably not making things better or worse. From Nicola, there was a question of, on a behavioural point, what is your opinion on a catio or enclosure to convert an outdoor cat? So I presume you mean by that like a cat that's had outside access before and is now required to be inside. So I think catios and enclosures are great. I think obviously there's always individual difference, and some cats might not be happy with that catio and might still want to go beyond the boundaries. And other cats might not even go in it because they're just happy to stay inside and sleep on the bed. So it is individual, but generally catios are a nice addition to a cat's inside territory. Like it's presumably a safe place and they can't get out. You want to make sure that that no cats can approach the catio and like sort of torment them in that way, if that's something that might happen. But it is good to, especially in multi-cat households, to just give like a change of scene. Like if cats aren't getting on so well, then that can be the option of like, oh, I'm going to head out and just sit in the catio for a bit. So it gives them that additional space and provides that additional stimulation from cats being outside. There's lots of different types of catio, so you can get like the freestanding ones, which, well, they're not ideal if they're not attached to the house, because then you have to go and take them and put them in a catio, which doesn't really work so well, because then you're in control of when they go out there, and they usually prefer to choose for themselves. But if you've got one that you can attach to the home, you can put cat flap in, or you leave a window open and they can come and go as they please, then that usually works quite well. I'm a fan also of like cat proofing the garden as well. So putting like cat proof fencing on the existing boundaries if it works. Like, I mean, if your garden works for that sort of setup, sometimes it's just like a big open field and then it's very difficult. You'd have to literally put in all the fencing. But if you've got like a 6-foot fence already, then it can just take a little bit of additional fencing around it to keep the cats inside. I would just be careful that other cats can't get in, because sometimes, like, you know, you can get the ones with like a roller. Rollers go like on the inside of the fences so the cats can't grip on. You'll sometimes find that another cat can jump in, but then they can't get out again. So that's a recipe for disaster. So I want to make sure that it's suitable for the cat. But yeah, I do like having full access to the whole garden. You can go out there and spend time with them, and they can, they're still safe from any hazards outside. I've just had a comment of, can a catio cause stress as they're watching prey and can't hunt? Yeah, potentially. The same as if you've got any inside cat, they can see the prey from the windows, and you get that like chattery noise that you sometimes see with cats sitting on windowsills, making that like teeth chattering noise. That's something that's just out of reach that they can't get. So yeah, it does present that problem as well. But again, it comes down to individual differences. Some cats will be totally fine with that. Sometimes cats, you know, they've seen a bird and they're desperate to get out there. In which case, perhaps the garden fencing would be more suitable, and that they would have that opportunity for hunting if something came in. But then again, keeping them from going over the sides and things. So there never seems to be one thing that's suitable across the board. Like, I'm not a fan of blanket rules. I like to look at the cat we're dealing with, or encourage someone to look at the cat they're dealing with and think about what would be best. So if you have a cat that's super motivated by prey outside and gets very frustrated about seeing prey from the windows, to the point where like you can't stroke them or touch them because they'll probably redirect that onto you, that sort of thing, then a catio may not be suitable. But again, it depends on the environment around you as well. If it's a concrete courtyard, you might not get many prey animals coming past. If you live with the woods behind you, then that risk is a lot higher. Likewise, if you've got neighbours who've got bird baths and different ways of attracting prey, then that's again going to be a higher risk. But yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind. So I hope that's helpful. Caroline has asked, so one of my cats keeps chasing and trying to jump on the back of the other. Tried games and distraction already. My question is, are there any other tips? They do chase each other and are usually not aggressive, only occasionally do I hear a hiss or go away. So I would just put a note here. When you say jumping on the back of the other, I presume you mean like during play, they're jumping on the other, like pouncing. Whereas like sometimes when I talk to people about the other cat getting on the back of the other, way down the line, it turns out to be humping, which I presume is not the case. But I'm like, oh, well, now I've seen a video, he's climbing on and he's like getting into mating position. So presumably, I presume that's not happening. But if it is, that's a different issue. But yeah, if we're just talking about cats that are chasing each other and jumping on one another, Sounds like you're doing the right thing in terms of games and distraction. I would just look at the situation and see if you can identify any places where it happens more. So, for example, like sometimes it can be on the cat tree because the top of the cat tree is the best, and one cat's in it and another one might come past and then jump on them to be like, actually, I want to sit there, so off you go. So if you notice any specific areas where there's that sort of behavior happening, then you can look to sort of unravel the tension there. So you might need an additional cat tree or another bed nearby that they can sleep in, or like if it's around the food bowls, then perhaps you can separate them while they eat. And avoid that happening. Or if it's around the cat flap, then you might need an additional exit outside. So it's can be more about like the context rather than what they're actually doing, and you can try and work around that. Likewise, if there's a certain time of day, so if you notice they wake up from their 2 hours snooze in the afternoon, and then there's like a play session that ends in hissing or jumping on each other, then that might be where you focus your games and distractions, because you know they're going to wake up full of energy, and that's where it's going to happen. However, like if it's not aggressive and only occasionally do you hear a hiss, then you might find that a lot of it is just play, and so you might not need to worry about getting involved too much. But just making sure that it isn't always one-sided, so it's not just one cat chasing the other constantly and the other cat being like, I don't want to play anymore, that there is turn taking, because again, that's a good sign that it is all good fun. And yes, one cat might have been chased away, but then she's straight back in again for more, so that's totally fine. Some similar questions. I tried to like group these together so that I could cover the same thing. So Mandy's question was, what's the best way to tell if my cats are fighting or playing? There's plenty of tails up and pouncing, running, changing places, but there's also also occasions where there is a back and the occasional hiss, but only from one cat to the other. So yeah, this is a really common one, and it's really tricky because lots of the behaviours you'll see during fighting, you will also see during play. So I would expect their ears to be back, sometimes like right back, turned back as far as they go. And I would expect their tails to be thrashing around sometimes, even during play. So that's totally normal, but there's just very subtle differences. So quite an obvious difference is vocalizing. So if there's no sound, then that's always a good sign. If there's hissing, then that's not a great sign, but it's not bad. So it's just enough to say like, I've had enough of this now. And so watch what happens after the hiss. So if one hisses at another, does it stop, or does the other one carry on and carry on and carry on? Because the hiss is enough to say, I've had enough now, can we stop that? So it doesn't mean they're not friends or they weren't having fun. It just means I'm done now. So that's okay. But if you're hearing any like growling or yowling, or you shouldn't really hear any like meowing noises during play, because it doesn't tend to happen. So if you're hearing the vocalizing like that, then that's a good indication that, okay, we've moved past play and it's now like fighting. So that's a good time to intervene, or before that if you can. Also, subtle signs such as like the claws won't be out usually if it's play, and the claws will be out if it's fighting. They will probably bite each other's faces and bite each other's like ears and all that, especially if they're kittens. That's all totally normal. And bunny kicking as well, with their back paws, like bunny kick each other's tummies and things. That's all okay. But if you notice any like swallowing or lip licking, so like you'll see them be like that's a silly impression, but if you notice that, then it's a sign that one cat is getting stressed. So the tension's rising and actually this isn't fun anymore. So that's a good time to intervene. And you'll probably notice that the behavior is just a bit more intense. So instead of being like bouncy, pouncing, like leaping up onto each other, it's like they're right in there. They're like diving at one another. And one cat will probably be higher than the other, like looking down, and then that won't swap around. So you'll notice it is always one that's like sort of going for the other, or has more of a confidence in the fight and is chasing and is going for them. So yeah, I realise some of these are so, I always say like how tense their bodies are. But it's so difficult to tell, isn't it? But that is a very good indication. And also whether they can be distracted. So like if you call them, do they look over, or are they just fixed on each other? Because that can be a good indication too. I'll just check the comments. I was about to ask you about biting during play. Yeah, so yeah, definitely it's totally normal. And sometimes when you see like kittens playing, like they're relentless, and you think, you want to jump in and save like your tiny kitten from being bitten in the face, but it's all part of it, and it is all normal. So again, just pay attention to those vocalizations, because that's the way of, like, the usual way of them saying, like, okay, this has gone too far. So Kimberly has asked, what are your professional views on rehoming two kittens together? Are they more likely to grow up and be friendly than introducing a new cat when they're older? I've also heard some cats falling out as they mature. Yeah, so I've heard both of these as well. I would always recommend, if you're going to get two cats ever, so if you're thinking like, okay, I want a cat, and then a few years on I might get another cat, I'm like, we might have two one day, then I would just bite the bullet and get two from the off, because that's your biggest chance of it going well. That's like the biggest chance of success. And mainly that's because then you don't have to stress about the introduction, because loads of times, like, the person has chosen a good match and they brought them home, but then they've thought, okay, like, my older cat's fine with other cats, here's a new one. I haven't really worried about an introduction because they've expected it to go so well, and it's all just gone to pot, and you think, oh, I know, I've like ballsed it up now. So you're eliminating the risk there. So it's just there's more chance of it going well, because that introduction is already done. They've grown up together. There's no shock to the system of like, suddenly got to share. That's just what they've been used to. So that's definitely like the best option, in my opinion. However, I would make sure you pick compatible cats. And last week, Lucy, I know you're here. Last week, my friend and I visited some kittens and spent a lot of time choosing the right match, because there were super confident ones, there was super, super quiet ones, and you wouldn't want to match those together. And we found two like really well matched cats that were like middle of the road, not super confident, not super, super shy, and I have no doubt that they're probably snuggled up together right now, which is lovely. So make sure to pick the right match. But if you get a mismatch from the beginning, then they might grow up to mature and actually they fall out at that point. But it tends to be around 18 months or 2 years, maybe a bit earlier, that suddenly that territorial nature kicks in and they're like, okay, I'm not so happy to share anymore. And, I don't really want to share my territory with another cat. So it's really, really important through that period, so from the start until they're around 2 years of age and beyond, let's just go for that, but to try to prevent them from falling out, like the setup of your home is paramount in getting them to get along forever, because you want to make sure there's no competition, so they're not fighting over that squashy, fluffy bed, and they don't both want to go to the top of the cat tree, because there's loads of like high platforms for them to get on. There's loads of squashy beds, and there's no competition for food, and like it just take the pressure off the territory, so that territorial behavior doesn't kick in, and they don't suddenly see each other as competition and want the other one out. So yeah, it's not a given, but it is your best chance of success. And Kimberly's also asked, so on the back of that question, I've started warning owners to do a slower reintroduction of cats when they're being into the vets. So I presume you reckon in the vets. So if we're seeing one but not the other sibling for neutering, should we be encouraging them to both come in together to try and prevent a falling out when you go home, so that they both smell the vets rather than just one? And the second kitten could just be there for boarding rather than having any procedure done. So apparently that's what is done for rabbits. I have no idea about like rabbit behavior, but that's interesting. For me, I have seen people recommend this, like, if you're going to the vet, just bring them both. However, in my experience, I don't think that's a good idea on balance. Like, there's pros and cons to both. However, I don't know if to tell you a story of my cat. I suppose I should. So I have Sparks, he's in bed, and he needed to have a dental op, and Fig here, when Sparks came back, the vet was like, he'll be sleepy, he'll be like worn out, he's had a big op done, a couple of teeth out. And then when he came back, he was absolutely wired. He was literally, his eyes were like this. He was almost walking on his tiptoes because he was like, I'm home. And he was like flying around the room. So I don't understand what was going on there. But I've never separated them previously because they get on so well, and I was like, oh, they'll be fine. But Fig was suddenly like, what is happening? And what have you brought back? I don't understand this. And there was the smells, there was Sparks' behaviour. It was so out of it that it made Fig feel anxious. So I've been there, even though it's never happened before. And he did hiss, and I was suddenly like, that failed, oh no. But a couple of hours and they were fine. However, it did make me realise that there was no way I could take Fig to the vet, because he's got diabetes himself and he has his own vet checks to do, and I don't want to take him on an additional vet check. Like, it's stressful. He doesn't enjoy the vets. Like, he's fine when he's there, but he doesn't love it. And Sparks was in all day, so I feel like that would have stressed him out way more than the experience he did have, which was dealing with like crazy sparks when he got back. But obviously the ideal, if I am to do it again, is to put Sparks in another room, keep Fig away, and then just give Sparks time to recover, even if it's just a day or so, to, like, depending on the severity of what they've had done, just like start to feel normal again, start to smell normal again, just wait for their behaviour to settle, and just see out that little transition period with them apart. So yes, I agree with you. Definitely a slower reintroduction or a period of separation. But I wouldn't recommend taking another cat with you, just because it's just the risk of that, the stress of that, I feel outweighs the stress of the falling out. Come down the middle and do a separation, and hopefully avoid any issues. I hope that makes sense. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there. Let me just read the comments here. So Lucy, is there ever a way for friends or family dogs to visit our house without stressing our cats, or is it a big no? Yeah, there is. So it depends. Like, if you're having a dog there for a long time, like staying, for example, then I would do like a couple of visits beforehand, to get them like familiar. And you want to set it up so that your cats are like in control. They can come and go when they please. Like, so for example, my in-laws were getting a dog. This was a few years ago now, and we wanted to introduce them a little bit, because we were thinking about getting a dog, which we did, which was Bucky, and that went great. So we brought my in-laws' dog into the garden, and I set up like a garden table near the door. So like the dog was down the end of the garden, and Fig came out into the outside the back door and sat on the table. So he had like some height. He couldn't, like, the dog couldn't get to him. The dog was on lead anyway, and we just like showed him, and we were like, "There's a dog." Obviously, Fig was looking, and he was like, "There's a dog," and we rewarded him and we stroked him, and it was like such a low pressure situation, because the distance was so great, and it was like 5 meters, but still, like, it wasn't like the dog was right in his space, and it was a zero pressure situation. So it's like, you can go back in if you want, or you can come back out if you want. It's up to you. Sparks didn't come down, which was fine too. So it's like, so you might want to think about doing some of those meetings that are just really low pressure meetings. But so that dog can come in now, and it's totally fine. Like, we did a few of those. So he does, because he stays with us for a few nights on occasion. However, sometimes we have had people's like friends come in with their dogs. If it's a dog we've never seen, then I put the cats up in the bedroom. Like, they've got all their stuff. They've got food, water, litter tray up there anyway. So I just put them in there, because it's for a couple of hours, and I haven't got time to do the introduction program, and it's just like a stressful event we just want to avoid and just see out that happening. So Lucy, we can talk about that in more detail if you want to, if that's happening. But yeah, if it's just a one-off, then I wouldn't worry about, I wouldn't let them see each other, because you don't know how that dog's going to respond. You don't know how the cats are going to respond. It might be totally fine, but we don't know. So in my experience, it's just best to like avoid that, unless you're planning on it being a long-term thing. Townsend says, our 2 cats used to sleep together when kittens, but they don't now. Just turned 3 years old, but I presume they still like each other as played together, but they just don't want to share a lap or beds anymore. Yeah, that's totally fine. Their behaviours will change over time, and it can change depending on like the time of year. Like when it's cold, Sparks will be under the duvet. That's like where he just hangs out. Whereas when it's warm, he'll be out in the garden. So they'll spend more time with each other just because they're hanging out in the same sort of spaces. And it might be that like you bought a new bed and one prefers that one and the other one prefers another bed sort of thing. So that can be a factor in it. But as long as you're not seeing any negative behaviours, like any fighting or any urine marking, anything like that, then I wouldn't think that's anything to worry about. Like, we can't make them be friends as much as we would love to, and I'm sure they still are friends, but if they're just doing their own thing in the same house, then that's absolutely like lovely. I would love them to be best friends, but as long as there's no issues, then there's no need to worry. Okay, I think I've only got one more question, which is from Polinskaya. I'm sorry if I've said that wrong. I've blatantly said that wrong, I'm sorry. But she asks, what are the signs that a female is getting her first heat and needs to be neutered? So first of all, I'd just say just neuter. Anyway, like, I don't think it was a good idea to neuter while she's in heat, although I literally have no like experience of that. However, it's fine to neuter her before she goes into heat for the first time, and it's fine to neuter in between as well, like afterwards. That's okay. But the signs that she's going into heat is she'll be cooling. So you'd be doing like really long, annoying meowing. She'll probably pace around. Sorry, she'll be pacing, so she'll be quite restless. And you might notice that she like walks around with her like tummy on the ground and her bum in the air, like while she's calling. So it's like she'll probably be behaving very strangely. And they can be more affectionate as well. Like she might notice she's like rolling around on her back and getting lots of like seeking out lots of affection from you. She might urine mark, and she might just be hanging around the doors being like, can you open this so I can go out and get and find me, please? So yeah, so I've been doing some stuff on neutering previously. There's other videos on neutering, but I feel like unless there's a specific reason why you are choosing not to neuter, then it's fine to just go ahead, like speak to your vet and get that booked in, because she'll be behaviourally happier without having to go through the heat cycle again and again. And if she does escape if she's an outdoor cat, then she will come back pregnant, almost guaranteed. And if she escapes, then there's a high chance again she'll come back pregnant too. So we don't want that happening just out of nowhere. So I think that's covered that question too. That's all the questions I had, and thank you guys for chatting and coming along. If anyone's got any more questions, then do feel free to message, or I'm not sure if the chat will stay here after, but if it is, then I can answer them. And then I'll try to do more sessions like in the coming weeks. So thank you guys for coming along, and it was lovely to chat to you, and take care everyone, and I will see you all another day. Let me just figure out how to end the stream. All right, take care. Bye everyone.